and welcome to the Babylon Chronicles, a podcast dedicated to taking a look at the inner workings, discussions, and shenanigans involved with making one of the world's most powerful, beautiful, simple, and open web rendering engines, Babylon.js. My name is Jason Carter, also known as Pirate JC. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, the creator and founder of Babylon, Mr. David Katui, also known as Delta Kosh in the Babylon world. And we've been cycling through a bunch of different guests, having a bunch of awesome people come join us. We got another really special one today. Paul Kluka has joined us. Paul is a very, very special guest because Paul not only works for a really great partner team of ours, Frame, but also happens to have won the community contest around creating shaders with NME, which is huge. Paul is the success story of why we create Babylon.js. What is it, David? 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, we started to dream up NME, the idea of NME, something like that. And we thought, hey, we got to make it easier for people to write GPU shaders. Yes. And we had an idea that we thought it would be helpful. And then there's a person who has basically built a job around it and has become like an expert at it. And it's like, that's just core for us, right? That's exactly what we want. We want to build the tools and we want people to use that tool to be the house. And when we see the house, we are so proud. Like, that's exactly the embodiment of that. So true. I mean, I can't emphasize that enough, what you just said, David. Paul, the fact that NME is not just worthwhile to you, but a key part of your workflow, to us is honestly like, it's everything. Man, it almost brings tears to our eyes. Like, this is why we do what we do, you know, this is it, this is right here. So I am super pumped to hear about the whole story. So a quick bit of context. We have a monthly meetup that's hosted in Frame, hosted by usually both Gabe and myself kind of together, but hosted in Frame. And we held a contest about creating shaders with NME that could be used. And Paul, what you created was just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, I think you probably had about 30 and you're like, which one do I submit? And so I think, yeah, it's pretty incredible. So one of the things that the rewards for that, if you call it such a reward, might be a punishment depending on your perspective. Not sure it's a reward, but is coming being on the podcast here with us. So let me start with this, Paul. Why don't you give me just a brief introduction of your role at Frame, what you do, and then I'd love to hear about how you got there, your history and your story.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Frame, it's so hard to put it exactly because it's always kind of shifting in these different ways. Being a technical artist, which I think ultimately my title is 3D engineer, but as a I'm just it's the in between spaces between the art and the technical side. And
the missing chain. You are the missing chain. Yes.
And so my days can look very, very different. It's just it's fantastic. It's problem solving, and sometimes I'll be solving problems in just very different places. So how I came to this from the art side. I went to art school, and I remember in high school asking that very stereotypical question of like, when am I going to use any of this math ever? And they were like,
all of us. Yeah.
they were like,
why do I need to learn that couple again?
This isn't practical. This is just to help you learn how to learn. I'm like,
right.
Oh, that's boring. So it wasn't. I was halfway through art school when I started getting usefulness, in that vein of like, wait a minute, this is actually really
wait
cool.
a minute. A cosinus and a sinus can be used to draw curves. Oh my gosh. Yes, right. Why didn't tell that? Sorry, why was not something that I learned before, right? Like when I was in school. Tell me that I can paint with sinus. I would love that.
Yeah. If I were a math teacher now, I'd have Babylon.js up and being like, all right, here we go. Practicality.
Exactly. Real world. Open NME. Let's go for a journey.
Yeah. And I continued on through I got my art degree, and I started working for a gambling company doing video slots, and there was a time when we needed a dedicated rigger. There was a lot of people doing rigging work, and we needed like one person to just be like, all right, I'm gonna start doing this. So I was like, I'll train up on it. That's really cool. And I got to this this other YouTube channel from Raf and Zovin, which is the Cult of Rig, and so good, absolutely
amazing channel.
wonderful content. And he was like, "Oh, you really should be learning linear algebra if you want to be doing this kind of stuff." And I was like,
What?
"Okay, okay."
So real quick, Paul, just to interrupt, just for anybody
Yeah.
who's not super familiar with kind of like the ins and outs of CG, can you explain rigging just for really like dumb it down for the idiots in the room?
Absolutely. Rigging is putting bones into 3D characters so that you can manipulate them in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah.
Like humans, right? We have a brain, but we have bones, and so we move because the bones keep us
It's
as a
like
solid piece, right?
Yeah, the analogy I use is kind of like the old King Kong. Like back in the 30s, there was a little clay character, but it had to have metal articulating
to keep
joints
it in
in
shape,
it to move
yes.
it around, right? Yeah. Love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, at the time, a lot of the like constraints inside of Maya weren't as effective as writing them through the shader node system, or like putting those together. So that concept of taking math to make your own more performant constraints, and it's just like, no, well, I mean, you just absolutely can't do this, you know, without knowing all the concepts behind it. It blew my mind. And so I was learning all that stuff real quick, and then I got the opportunity to move out to Nebraska to do something very different.
Now, you called that an opportunity to move to Nebraska. That's the word you're going to use?
Yeah,
opportunity.
So it's
opportunity to move to Nebraska. I keep that in mind. Okay.
Yeah, that's not a phrase I hear too often.
No, not too often.
So it's funny because my brother was out here, and it was just one of those things where it's like my family was always like popping all around the place. I grew up in Europe, so my brother was out here, and it's one of those things where I was like, I really want to get close so that, you know, I can do this, but you know, and then that like idea of still working in a technical field that's related. So I ended up working for civil engineers, which is it's not the first thing that comes to your mind with like, all right, well, artist background, technical background, in these kinds of ways.
Rigging to civil engineering. Okay, all right.
In Nebraska again.
In Nebraska.
Yeah. They were looking to diversify and up their visualization game, which definitely in my wheelhouse. But a lot of what I was doing there was dealing with 3D scanning work and doing like remeshing a lot of the stuff that their technical or their guys would go out into the field, and they would put these scanners out, and then that needed to be put together, and then also we needed to be able to present that work. And as the person in between things, there I was. So where it connects back into the math is there were like these APIs that these programs had exposed, and a lot of the stuff that I had learned rigging, the linear algebra, the constraints, the like how things, you know, work together, I was like, oh, that's here too. I found it. And I was able to like write different plugins and do like those sorts of things. And that was really exciting for a time. And then you know, one more time with the opportunities, you know, something opened up in Frame, and I was like, all right, here we go.
So you found them online? Or how did you find the opportunity?
I have a friend who works at Verbella, and he said,
network. Yes,
you would work out really well over here. We need to get you into the metaverse.
Love that.
And so so then I started working there, and one of the first days that I was being shown around, it was like, all right, well, you know, here's NME. We love this. We're starting to use it to break barriers. And
your new toy. This is your new toy.
Yeah. And then once again, hey, here's all those same concepts. So like it's just been like wonderful, like, oh, I can problem solve, I can put these things together, and we can use this to create functionality that hopefully no one's seen before. That's my goal of like, I love using NME in a way that'll make people say, how did you do that?
Yeah,
that's so satisfying, right? Like,
it really is.
Voodoo magic or what did you do, right?
Yeah. And I think, Paul, I love your story about, getting into tech art. And I think this is probably one of the most underappreciated areas in this world of kind of technology and art, because as an engineer, oftentimes you think very differently from how an artist thinks. And I've been in countless environments where the communication between those two groups can often be challenging just because of the way we think, the things we prioritize. Obviously, engineers have to consider things like performance, capabilities of hardware, things that an artist doesn't honestly really care about. I want the pixels to look as good as they can on screen. I want the experience to feel good, and these are equally as important things. But so much of the time, there's kind of conflicting goals in that.
We don't have the missing chain again, right?
That's right.
Person in between again.
Yeah. That's right. And so the tech artist comes in with honestly being able to, and I'm sure you are an expert in both. Most of the tech artists I've met tend to kind of consider themselves not the best engineer and not the best artist in the world, but actually really good at understanding and translating between those two. Hey, I need to understand enough about performance characteristics to know how to make the best, most beautiful art I can with those constraints. And there's magic in that. There really is.
I can tell easily with our own tech artist at home, right? With Patrick, who was on the channel recently. Like, yes, sometimes you see stuff and say, oh, it happened to me when I saw your shader, to be fair, Paul. Like, I was cool. Gosh, we can do that with NME?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's like,
and I'm the one who wrote the engine. I am the one who wrote NME. NME is I wrote the code. And when you see someone using your tool, and say, what? It happened a bit when Jason was testing it at the beginning as well. He was creating some chimera monster and was like, oh gosh, we can do that. So it's always a pleasure to see that.
Yeah, in the early days, there was one particular shader I was developing, which was following an old like NVIDIA doc on caustics, on water caustics. I did a YouTube series on it, but the goal was to let's do the biggest node tree that we can, and let's push this thing to the max. And every time, David just kept going, oh gosh, what is it?
He was zooming. That was crazy. He was just showing me one frame inside the shader. I was like, okay, it's okay. And then he zoom out, and then a second, and a third, and a fourth, and a 10th, and a what? So I imagine your shader the same way, by the way, Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's which is so funny because I know that when I'm like making these the frames for my node tree, I keep on wanting to put frames within frames, and sometimes I'm like, maybe this is too far. Have I pushed
right?
Yeah. Is this going to break the CPU and GPU together? Maybe.
And the thing about frame and when we have to make shaders for frame, we have to keep mobile in mind.
Yes,
because I would love to just be like, oh, let's just cater to PCs. Let's just make these awesome shiny things. But we have to fake so much, or just put up the illusions, so that we can run these things. I have a really old phone that I love right now for this. So it's my reality check, where I'll do these kinds of things, and then I'll walk through a frame with my old phone and be like,
is it still okay? Okay.
Yeah.
But by the way, do you have for frame a minimum expectation? Like if you create a shader, let's say, and it runs at what is your minimum? Like you expect it to be 15 frame per second? What's 20 frame per second? Do you have a limit, or do you accept to have beautiful shaders even if they run on some device?
It really depends on the environment we're creating and what we're creating it for. So we have one environment that one of my coworkers made. Sol, this experimental environment was called, and they were like, "All right, go nuts."
Okay.
Just like
burn my computer, please.
Yeah, and then we'll have other environments like the Atlas Hall, where it's like we need 1,500 people to be able to be in this frame at the same time. Okay. And so it's just like, all right, yeah, let's like
you're on a budget.
Yeah. And for me it's really fun because it's just like, all right, let's tear it out. We're not going to use PBR. We're gonna bake our colors. We're gonna have like let's leverage our vertex colors. Let's leverage just just pull out all the stops for trickery. And that's what it really feels like you're a magician. Like, all right.
It's problem solving, right? It's part of the equation and you have to solve it.
Yeah, and I love that thinking too. I love the idea of just saying, okay, what is technically available to us that we can leverage, even if it's in ways that we don't typically think about. There's one particular example that it's going to be permanently seared in my brain. It's something that Patrick, our tech artist, taught me, which was the idea of storing animation data into textures, into pixels.
Yeah.
Like that concept just bricked my brain. It was like, wait a minute. Wait, I have keyframe data for X, Y, and Z, and I have RGB channels, and I was like, no way!
That's the same! They are the same!
And it's like, but
vector is a color in a trench coat, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, vector is a color in a trench coat. Quote of the year right there. I love it. But that is the tech artist's mindset. The journey you go through is kind of like, okay, what do I really have here? At its baseline to get this in this art, what do I have? I have numbers. And this, I think, is part of your journey, Paul, is I have math, I have numbers. How can I store that or create code that can create those numbers? And like the process of figuring that out and thinking outside the box. I mean, essentially, that's the tech artist journey right there. Yeah. It's amazing.
And it's fun to watch, right? When you look at shaders and you say, oh, fuck, what are they doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's clever.
Like, that's clever.
Like, that should be illegal. Hold on. I love it.
Exactly that. For sure.
And it's such a big world. It's such a big world that like you could be doing this for decades and still come across someone who tricked the system in a way you hadn't thought.
Right. Very true.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That's incredible, Paul. And I love your story and I love your passion for the space. I'd be really curious to know, in your world of having to blend both Babylon as a technical platform, because Frame is based on Babylon, right? Mm-hmm. And then also wanting to create these really immersive worlds for people in Frame. What has been if you may share, you can say no comment, but what has been the biggest like hurdle or challenge for you? Like the most interesting thing where I've had to go, ooh, okay, I have these limitations technically, but I want to do this, for beauty wise. Like what's been the story there that's been the most interesting for you?
Yeah, so it's really funny, and I don't mean to out the Babylon community on this one because it's an interesting world that I've put myself into where sometimes I'll ask a question on the Babylon forums and it'll be like, oh, just go into your code and change this. I'm like, well, I can't do that right now.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I was trying to when making the sway on the trees, and putting in that global wind, I was having issues because I was trying to use vertex colors. Instance colors. I was trying to use instant colors to make the distinctions between things, and it was like they're like not storing from when the instance disappeared. So then
very true. Yeah, the system removed them, of course.
Yeah, that's an optimization, right?
Exactly right.
Wonderful. I always love like how many Babylon optimizations are already in there.
You love them until you don't realize
until
they're
you
there
didn't,
and they
yeah,
fight
right.
against you.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
But so it's just one of those things where it's just like, oh, okay, well then that's not the avenue that I need to go on. And then it just I started coming down that path of matrix multiplication, and it was like, oh yes, this is how we're going to do things. And it's opened up so many things for me in how to creatively interact with objects, that I'm almost glad that door was closed, because it's like, oh, look what else I found on the way.
Yeah, for sure.
To be fair, it's very interesting, right? I don't know if you plan to share that, like the journey you went through for your shader or stuff, but that's very interesting bit of knowledge that a lot of people would appreciate. I don't know, maybe it's secret within Frame and you don't want to share it, but yeah,
No,
that's super useful.
One of the things, and Gabe has been really cool, giving us this directive of like, we can write GLSL on our own and make our own shaders, but that's not good for the community. For the community, we want to share, and that's why I was able to present some of the back end of my shaders in the Babylon meeting. The more people that we can help come to this, or show them that it's not inaccessible. To say, for someone like an engineer to say, oh, maybe I can work on the artistic side of this, figuring out like, hey, if I use different noises, I can make fire, those kinds of things. Or bringing the artists like me and saying, yes, I'm capable of more technical things. And so it's kind of this wonderful journey between Babylon and Frame, to say like, let's make these things accessible. So absolutely, I'm open book on my NME stuff.
I love that. And I think that's one of the reasons that there's been such a strong bond, in Frame and Babylon. I know, obviously, you guys chose to build on Babylon and you've helped us make it better. I mean, so many times Frame has challenged and said, can we do this? And you guys are always respectful and kind, and but I think that's part of what's bonded us. But the other part, and I think you're really hitting the head on this, is just we're coming, throughout the 70s, 80s, 90s, you had this world where corporations just kept everything secret sauce. It's all about patents, and the idea of open source, the idea of maybe we work on things together was like a taboo, right? Like a corporate taboo, And here we are, into into the 2000s here, and we are at a point where suddenly the world is realizing we can actually accomplish more when we do it together.
A part of the world.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
We're trying.
Some people may struggle still.
Yeah,
to see that.
But I think there's this really interesting thing. How many times, Paul, have you come to the community at large surrounding Babylon and Frame and said, hey, I've got this problem, would love some help here? And then how many times have other people come and given you ideas that then, Frame benefits from? How many times then has Frame challenged Babylon or even contributed to stuff that have made Babylon better? That then in turn make Microsoft products better.
Of course.
It's like this beautiful story where it's like, you know what? When we all just put our egos aside and work towards something together, it's a really beautiful story. And okay, put the Disney flair to this aside for a second.
I was watching Mickey Mouse walking behind you.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so forget Mickey for a second. There's actually a practical business element to this, right?
Yeah.
Like Frame is able to probably do more than has resources to do because of the fact that you can turn to the Babylon team for some help to unlock some things for you guys. There is
Babylon or the forum or the community.
Exactly. There's some degree of extra resource there, and vice versa. The same is true for us. How many people, interesting question to you, Paul, how many people do you think in Babylon's history in 10 years have contributed back to making Babylon better? From small bug fixes to big features, what would be your guess?
Oh man. Well, I hope a lot. I hope it's like, just put 100 on it.
100 is a good number. 100 is a good number. I would say, so just code contributors, most people don't know this, just code contributors, there's been well over 500 people that have
Oh
contributed back to
yeah.
Babylon over the course of a decade. Now, again, some of those are tiny bug fixes, some of those are documentation
Gigantic
fixes,
monsters,
some of those
yes,
are behemoth features, huge features. We have a little bit of a preview here. We have a bunch that are coming with Babylon 7 that came from the community, and we just are overjoyed every single time because they make the engine better and because they help everybody who uses the engine have a better experience. It's just, sorry, I don't mean to go off on a diatribe. It's just,
Yeah,
it's
no,
such an important part of what we do.
it's fantastic. It's fantastic. And it's one of those things where like, I love, so I made a switch from working on Maya to doing Blender based stuff.
Good.
And
Like
I
that.
love Blender so much. It's
Dude.
just, yeah.
Yes.
And it's just that, yeah, that the community coming together,
Oh my
and
gosh. Yeah.
if someone asks, how do I do this? Just, it's accessible. Just go download it. You can find this. You can come in and you can work on this too. It's not like, well, I need to pay a ton of money and get over
wait
a
for
bunch
10 years to get my feature. Maybe.
I need $2,500 just to get in the door, and then I need a degree to learn how to use it. Or it's free, and there's a whole community of people with a billion tutorials that will teach you how to use it.
Billions of add-ons. Like,
if I'm a student, if I'm learning computer graphics, which one of those paths sounds the most accessible to you? I mean, like, no brainer. Although I will say, it did take the Blender organization getting over its own ineptitude in the UI department. Because I was
2.8 was the solution.
2.8. 2.8 was the turning point, for sure.
It was.
No question. I could not function in Blender before that, and I tried.
I mean, yeah, it's especially coming from Maya or Max. Like, it's just, yeah,
for sure. There were multiple times throughout my own career where I used Maya for about 15 years exclusively, and I tried to get into Blender multiple times, and I was like, I'm sorry, you right click to select, or left click to select. I was like, I can't figure this out. I don't understand it. Everything is completely broken. Yeah, it was just absolutely nuts.
I at first really I just turned off the 3D cursor, and now I rely on it so much.
Yeah, for sure.
That's funny because I played with 3ds Max long time ago with my previous engine because I wrote the exporter, but I was not a user, right? So I came to Blender like almost virgin, like it's all new. For me as a developer, Blender was fantastic. Yeah. Everything I was expecting to be there was there. Like,
yeah. And it's in, I love it. It's in production order in tabs. Where you start.
Layout first, and then shading,
and
you just for sure.
Oh, what do you have to think about next? Materials. Oh, what do you have to think about next? Animation and rigging. It's just like, compositing at the end. It's brilliant. It's so well done. So well done. Paul, I have an interesting other topic to ask you about, which is kind of a bit more of a philosophical question. Curious your take. So obviously you work for Frame. Frame is an interconnectiveness platform that kind of brings people together in virtual environments across different devices.
Metaverse.
A metaverse, yeah, although I think it's potentially more than that. But yeah, and we're living in now a post-COVID world, right? There was a point in time where it was like, okay, the whole world goes home. We can't be together physically. So now, and I think the instant understanding of virtual space made a ton of sense. And now we're in this interesting post-COVID world where we're seeing that some people want to stay home and can stay home. Some people are going back to the office. It's kind of a mix, and we're kind of in this weird hybrid effect. Yeah. So I'm really curious what you think about in the terms of like, what does interconnectiveness kind of mean, and from your perspective in a post-COVID world? Yeah. What is Frame's role in bringing people together? How do you see that? What excites you about being in the space you're in right now?
So the world is huge. And when it comes down to interconnectiveness, that idea of being present with other people, the more options we have, the better. So when it comes down to, there are things that we can do in Frame that at least I haven't seen anywhere else. And even if you are in an office, often we've got these global corporations that need to work together. They need to sync up, and we need to make sure that every kind of interaction is optimized between those groups. So, for example, when we have our art meeting, we're in these spaces, and we'll have like different screens up. And then and you can put up screens in a bunch of different softwares. But when we have like two screens up at the same time, and our little avatars have these little laser pointers, you can do like some really great comparing and contrasting of the art workflow to show, all right, well, here's what I've got up, and then they'll put a laser pointer. Cool, I like this. Maybe you could change on these types of things. And the ability to have your avatar like walking up to the spaces and seeing this,
it's physical.
It adds a human element that some of these other options you don't feel as much. And so I mean we'll even use other options too, like Lucid Spark is a really cool thing where you've got laser pointers and stuff as well, but then you don't get the like streaming screen,
and physicality of being in the room, of course.
Yeah,
absolutely. And that is just, and sometimes if you don't want your camera on as well, like once you've seen a person and like you see their avatar walking around, it gets like you have that familiar like area to where you don't have to have your camera on to feel that connection. So I love it. And when it comes down to like the way that the United States is built up as well, of like, well, we've got to drive everywhere to see each other, and sometimes people will move across the country, and you still want to keep in contact with them.
Sometimes people even drive to Nebraska. It's weird.
Yeah, why would they do that?
No, that does not happen.
Yeah.
So it's like we say post-COVID as if like, oh, okay, now we're all seeing each other in person all the time.
Of course, we are still living on the same city, of course. Yeah.
It's a really interesting thing you're hitting on here, because I actually think everybody forced to go home actually propelled culture in a really interesting way, that even though maybe you could physically still be together, it actually unlocked the ability for countless workplaces to say, hey, yeah, I mean, Babylon team, we got people in Germany, France, Brazil, all over the world. And that is now normalized. That was odd before COVID, and that's now normalized. So the ability to work together, to collaborate together, to celebrate together, whatever that may be, suddenly it's kind of COVID normalized that, or maybe I should say the going home during COVID normalized that. So it's really fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. And like there's no reason to stop developing the tools that connect us.
Yeah.
Even though now
on the contrary,
Yeah. Well said. I'll weigh into the space a little bit myself to say that I believe the single greatest invention is the whiteboard. I adore it. I love being in person and solving a problem together on a physical space that can be drawn on and erased and overdrawn. And there's something about that emotionally that conveys this really like band of brothers kismet with the person you're collaborating with, right? Like when we are solving a problem together, when you're holding a whiteboard pen, when I'm holding a whiteboard pen, and we're working this problem together, and I'm feeling that you're in this with me, you're right next to me, we're solving this problem together. The video connectiveness world, in my opinion, I'm just speaking for myself here, I don't think it's tapped it. I don't think that same emotional connection exists in a Teams or a Zoom. And not that I don't love video calls, that they enable us every single day, but the emotional connection to solving the problem is different for me. And I have been obsessed with looking at interconnectedness, and particularly like metaverse or virtual space connection, and going like, can I rekindle that? Can I find that again? Can I work next to somebody? And so you're actually touching on this, Paul, when you talk about the idea that we're in a space, we're looking at the environment that's being created, we're throwing up laser pointers, and there's a person next to you or at least a virtual representation of them in a physical space next to you, it just feels different. And I feel like one of the things that is just lost is the idea of, yes, can you procedurally solve problems together? Sure. But what about how you feel about it when you're doing it? And that's a really interesting thing that people don't often stop and think about is, what does it feel like to solve a problem when you're in the office together, when you're on a video call, when you're in a virtual space? And those are all different. And I'm still looking for replicating the emotional connection in the physical space. And that's where I think a virtual metaverse-like platform gets much closer to that than what we do traditionally with like a video teleconference type of a thing. Just my little diatribe.
Well said.
Yeah. And another thing that video conferencing does is it makes very small groups. And when you're in frame, that idea of we've got spaces for small groups, but we've got spaces for medium groups, we've got spaces, large auditoriums for large groups, and then that idea of like I'm here in this area solving this problem, but I'm seeing, oh hey, this other person's there, so then you're able to just and with the spatial audio and with the voice tones that we have, then it's like, oh, okay, I see they're available, so I'm going to walk over there. And having that business-like, like idea of being able to come up to those people where you need to solve a problem with them. It is different than just saying, oh wait, I need to send them a Slack message. I need to
very true.
Yeah, or hey, we can co-edit this PowerPoint slide together or whatever it is. Just from afar, it just feels a little bit different. You reminded me of something. I can't claim this as truth. I heard this secondhand. I don't even know from where, but I heard a story that the development team on Zelda Breath of the Wild actually placed a representation of every bug in the game into the world.
I heard that as well.
To force the developers to take the character around the world to go find a bug to try. And it was, to me, that was a fascinating idea of like, hey, how do you get your people to be in that world, to be in that immersive world that you're creating? It's like, well, take it off of a flat page and put it in the world. I was just like, that's so genius. Sorry, it's kind of related, but like that idea of being in a space and forcing people to kind of have a connection to the problems. That was a great example of that.
Oh yeah, and so it's fun too when we're working on environments, how we can just put up the space in its incomplete form. And so like sometimes even if it's a small enough fix, we'll just go in there and then just make a tweak and then put and then walk around in the environment. How does this feel now? How the transition space from here to here, the ramps from here, like how's this working? And it's just it's so great to be able to problem solve in that way with people in a digital environment. It's not just look at this screen, it's be here.
Oh, by the way, do you use a headset or do you use the flat screen when you are in?
Oh, all flat screen. I don't have a headset.
Me too.
Right now.
Me too.
Okay,
That's funny, right?
Yeah.
Me too. But you support the headset and everything. You
can I've been in frame many times in the Quest 2. Many times. Worked great.
But okay. It works super well, but for me, I don't know why I like the flat screen anyway.
That's used to it. You're indoctrinated.
Probably.
Break your thinking.
Yeah. Think out of the box.
Absolutely. But real quick on that idea of collaborative design stuff, one thing that I think this ties in with NME, that is hard to give in any other medium is art directors are or even clients generally very, very, very picky on color. And one of the cool things is we can easily make a slider or a color picker in NME, put it inside a frame and say, pick the color. Just
love it.
I don't need to make 40 different versions of this so that you can go, like, no, tell me what the hex code is and send it back and I'll bake it in.
It's amazing.
Well, yeah, or the fact that they can just be like, we can just leave it open and they'd be like, all right, corporate colors in there. We've got our hex codes.
Yeah, I love it. That's amazing. Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question, which is going to totally put you on the spot. I
yeah,
want to
my
encourage
favorite
you.
question.
I want to encourage you to say no comment. For all of the Frame fans out there, is Frame supported on the Vision Pro, or is that support coming? Are you guys working on it? And you can no comment if you don't want to share any news.
So I'm not directly involved with that, but I
Good.
think
Nice
that
one.
it
Nice one.
yeah, I think that it works.
I will tell you this. I will tell you this just to help you out a little bit. We are making sure that Babylon works on the Vision Pro.
Okay.
Supports elements of the WebXR standard, which Babylon fully supports. So we are making sure that you are technically covered. Whether or not you guys want to share your roadmap plans, I won't. Gabe will kill me if you share too much. So,
Of
but I
course,
thought
like-
I'd just throw that out there.
Yeah, like disclaimer, I know nothing.
Yeah. There you go. I plead the fifth. Yeah, that's exactly right. Oh man, Paul, let me ask you one final thing. If you don't mind sharing your forum username, just so that if there's other tech art artists out there or people who want to connect around the tech art community, if you'd be willing to let people connect with you, that'd be awesome. He's looking it up.
Well, like I'm like, well, it could be three things.
Sorry, I'm putting you on all kinds of the spot now. You weren't prepared. My bad. That's my fault.
I can figure it out.
I'll tell you what. You send it. Oh,
you had asked me one thing. This is if I were to have something that I would ask for.
Yes.
Yeah, you told me to put you on the spot here.
That's right.
And one thing, so
what's
optimization.
missing?
Optimization is everything I do. So inside of Node Geometry Editor, which I absolutely love, on the little nodes, it tells you how long it takes to process those nodes.
Yes.
Can we get that for NME?
Look at him saying no. Not with that attitude, you can't.
Now,
Come
of course,
on, David,
I know. Let me explain why. Okay. So NG is CPU based, right? Meaning that the CPU control every stage, and I have full control over every stage. So I execute on the CPU every single stage of NG, and so I can measure. Super easy for a developer. It takes me 10 seconds. But NME is very different because what produce NME is not code. I mean, it's not CPU code. It's a shader, right? And that shader is then sent as a whole entirely to the GPU. The GPU then compile it into something like from GLSL to binary code that the GPU understands. And so every single block does not exist anymore. And even if they existed, I don't have a access from the CPU to track every single stage. Unfortunately, that's the power of shader, right? They run on the second processor, the GPU. But the problem with that is I can't tell you, oh, these two lines, maybe they do not exist anymore because they were inline into something bigger in the shape that I have no idea. And even if they exist, I have no way to put a breakpoint and capture the time. I would have loved to tell you, hey, you know what? This one, 10 seconds.
The analogy I like to use here is writing a shader is like being at a soundproof wall, and there's somebody on the other side of the wall who's going to take your instructions and execute them. So you want to have plans for a building. You're going to pass that through the wall because you can pass messages through the soundproof wall, but you can't talk. And they're going to get those instructions and they're going to start building a building. And then you're going to go to that wall and you want to say, hey, how's it going? They can't communicate back to you.
How long does it take to build the first stage? And they will tell you, what first stage? We build everything from a curvature approach that no one knows what they are doing, right?
Yeah,
and we split that build into the 10,000 core that you have. So I don't know which part is executed where.
Now,
we don't know.
Here's an interesting question, David. Is this a limitation of how GPU architecture works in computers, or is this a limitation of WebGL?
I could do better with DirectX 12 for sure, because we can inject some callback loops, but it's not. It will not be perfect anymore because again, the compilation will transform the view we have into something very different. So the cosinus, for instance, will disappear completely because it's actually swallowed into the instruction. So unfortunately, I can't.
Yeah.
Technically, I can't.
And it doesn't get any better with WebGPU.
No, it's actually getting far faster.
Yeah.
but
more
less controllable.
Yeah. Okay. All right. There you go. There's the answer, folks.
Yeah.
That's a good.
One
That's
thing
a
we
good
can
one,
do
though,
is
Paul.
in a web GPU is memory barrier. I can stop the system, but we don't want to do that because then I have to pump the entire pipeline just to tell you, okay, I'm here. But the point is how long it takes. It's gonna take 10 seconds to stop everything just to know I'm here, right?
So to tell you how efficient it is, you're making it 10 times less efficient.
Yes, right. Which does not help, right?
Because like sometimes you know, I was saying, like looking up things on mobile, sometimes like I'll like overrun some processes to slow everything down for myself, so that I can see you know, how much like, you know,
This
this gonna handle,
specific
yeah,
part,
or like,
yeah.
you know, looking at my on my phone and stuff like that. So that idea of like, okay, yeah, fine, throttle it, but I like seeing that difference, because one of the things, like I'll know, like, oh, okay, I know that the gradient node, it's kind of expensive, I'll just do a workaround with smooth steps, and then it's just like, wait a minute, how many smooth steps do I have to add to make it worse than a gradient node?
Yeah, right.
So it's fun, and it's like, it's the fact that there is this like wiggle room, you know, keeps me with a job.
Yeah, there you go.
It protects your job, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Job security, the GPUs. That's what we always say. That's absolutely right.
That's what the G stands for.
I have an alarm running in my house right now. You may not hear it, but I have an alarm, and my daughter is a little bit scared. So I gotta go, right?
Yeah, that's actually
sorry about
probably,
that, Paul. Thank you. That's very much live right now, so I have to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a bye, David. That's actually
I'll
probably
be back, Jason, in a few seconds. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, right. That's probably a good space for us to call it, actually. Paul, I want to thank you a ton for being on the podcast with us. Man, I'm so pumped about the work that you do, how you're leveraging Babylon tools to make incredible visual stuff. To go check out the work that Paul is doing, please go check out Frame. I'll put a link in the video and podcast description for this, but please go check it out. It's an incredibly immersive and beautiful space, and a huge part of that is the work that Paul's doing. So, Paul, thank you for all the work you're doing. Thanks for using the enemy to do amazing things, and thanks for being on the podcast with us, man.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, Babylon is fantastic. We love working with you guys. Amazing.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy. All right. Well, that's a podcast, and we'll see you all later. Thanks, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.